Now, okay, we are back, and I hope it works. It may not. We were at the critical success factors, you may remember. So we just talked about the governance. You remember, the principles by which we should organize a wonderful setting. Like basically have key stakeholders around the table to make an informed decision representing the values you are after in those projects and the partnerships, really. Now, critical success factors, this is where we kind of stopped. Each of the participants is a principal and can bargain in its own behalf, on its own behalf, the interest that they represent, very important. Involves an enduring relationship among the actors with some continuing interactions. These are based on trustful negotiation and dialogue. Yeah, so again, the importance is here kind of trusted and what do you call it? Same eye height? No. Is that in English an analogy that you use? This makes only sense in my German mind at the moment, but does it make sense? Eye to eye kind of negotiation. Yeah. Each actor must be able to bring something good to the relationship. Yeah, this can be of any kind. This can be as well negotiation power, convincing power, political power, you name it. Yeah? All actors have shared responsibility for the outcomes of their activities. So this is as well very important to recognize. Now, the project lifecycle of PPPs is pretty similar to ours. It's just that there are different sub-stages. I won't go into details, but have a look at those. Yeah, because it's the same lifecycle more or less. The preliminary stage is recognizing a need. Yeah, so you kind of pre-propose a need for a new project. This is normally what we don't consider our basic pre-stage to a project. Normally we start with project conception in our normal project life cycle. Then we kind of come to a project identification, and here we kind of look for suitability assessment. We may look as well for partners that we want to invite to kind of join us on that endeavor. Then there's a project appraisal. Here is as well the selection of the PPP type. So how do we want to do this? Do we want to run it more with a public sector setting, or do we want to more privatize? So maybe a hybrid that we're after. And that is a evaluation, and here you define often as well the structure and kind of propose your terms and conditions and negotiate those. So this is quite important. And then you have kind of the design agreement. This is often where you have set already the stages. And this is as well where the monitoring starts. So you go from the evaluation to the monitoring. Here you have PPP design, procurement process selection, agreement of national authorities and funders as well. So that you have basically the vehicle how you want to do it. Yeah. And then the procurement. So here again, tender evaluation, negotiation, contracting. If you do it in a house, there may not be that. Yeah. Then implementation, construction, operation, monitoring, contract management, and evaluation afterwards. So this is kind of like a standard process, and this didn't work. With this, you arrive as well at a certain kind of duality or scale. So on one side you have the profitability, which are we in the public sector after profitability? Are we after in the public sector? If we do something for the people, do you want to be profitable? So I had already nodding, and then some, yeah. No?
Value for money.
Value for money. Yeah. So profitability, maybe private interest. Having said so, a lot of public sectors do look as well after the spending. So if they have more return for it, then they can reinvest it. Yeah, exactly. So self-sustaining operations, there's still an aspect of that. But normally profitability is kind of associated with shareholder value perspectives and value management principles. So this means you kind of value each aspect against kind of what you're setting out to create the value. Now on the responsibility side, this is normally where the public sector has a greater need, and you see here the overlap value management principles versus stakeholder value perspectives, where you want to have the value created for your stakeholder that you are after. Yeah? And again, the harder side is the service delivery, which overlaps here. Yeah, the shareholder value perspectives, this is what you're paying for. Yeah, does that make sense? But they overlap. So there's responsibility and profitability on either side. Yeah. Does that make sense? And my wonderful symbolism underneath. In between, it didn't go that way, but in the end, it paid off. Yeah? And here, community. Okay, I have a few like kind of pointers to get us thinking for our case study. So benefits, speedy, efficient, and cost-effective delivery of projects. Actually, I don't know many PPPs where this is true, but okay, never mind. This is the literature. Value for money for taxpayer through optimal risk transfer and risk management. Yeah, so there's a lot actually in this. Then efficiencies from integrating design, construction of public infrastructure with financing, operation, maintenance, and even upgrading sometimes. Yeah? So you notice what you have built. There's actually new stuff in a private incentive. If there's a call from customers and you want to create value for your local people, yeah, or your stakeholders, then you can actually throw the extra fund in, and private companies will have an interest to probably implement that. Yeah, so this is again the service that they're providing, especially if you have something like that in the clauses, and they are there to do it. Then creation of added values through synergies between public authorities and private sector companies, and innovation and diversity and provision of public services. Last but not least, competition and greater construction capacity. But we come to our case studies in a second, to the story of Mulheim. I have a very personal insight to this. I can give you more insight to that in a second. And then, of course, effective utilization of state assets. Concerned that it's already assets, but okay, state goods to the benefit of all users of the public services. Yeah. Now, however, as I already pointed out, PPP can present many advantages. However, the schemes are complex too. So design, implementation, and manage. If you have something like a PPP project, it's normally mega projects, kind of straight away. Yeah, so it means this is slightly rude what I'm saying now, but it's a little bit lazy from the public sector. They could have broken it down in many normal-sized projects and managed it appropriately. Now, this is as well an option. But again, this is controversial. But by no means the only preferred option should only be considered if it can be demonstrated that PPP is the way forward. Yeah? So can achieve additional value. There is an effective implementation structure if all objectives, all parties can be met. Yeah? So it's as well a quick way of dealing with a big chunk of money that you have received, to basically not having the responsibility of breaking it down sensibly to your structures. Yeah, so if it's managed by the public sector, you will see that the Swiss are very big in this. They break it down all one by one. Yeah, so even the bus stop, yeah, that is part of kind of the whole road that it gets made, this gets contracted out individually. So bus stop, then extra post the bench. You can bid as well for the bench only. Yeah? So it's up to you. So everybody can basically kind of bid for it. Yeah? So you have not just the big companies, but as well small enterprises that have specialized on an aspect are basically in it. Now there are disadvantages as well. Much more complicated than conventional procurement contracts. Very large tendering and contracting costs, because basically you give it all out, and respectively the main contractor may then again subcontract it and so forth. Private and public sectors often have different goals and organizational philosophies and cultures. Yeah? The cost of contract renegotiations are often high, and the difficulties of ensuring good performance, especially with respect to soft performance dimensions. What are soft performance dimensions?
Public opinion.
Yes.
Could be soft.
Yeah. So what is a good example? Do you have an example in mind?
Maybe. I mean, public sector. There's the public, and if they have a bad perception of a development, they don't think it's a very sustainable development or whatever it is, which is outside the normal performance criteria, subcontracted, and it's a soft performance dimension. I guess.
Yeah. This was a very good description, I have to say. Soft performance dimensions can be something like making a road like just walk pedestrianized, so that you can only kind of walk over it. You may have seen this here in the city center. The council actually went for that quite a bit. Now the benefit for you as a student is you can walk around here without being hit by cars. Yeah. And the not so nice thing is it's actually quite difficult to find a parking spot here. Is anybody driving here? Yeah. So where do you park? Is it easy?
Just opposite.
Opposite.
Yeah, you come off the roundabout and you actually come round. So it's
also in the States, yeah. Over.
Yeah, it's expensive, man.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the point. You
It's
cannot.
expensive.
I tried 1 hour, but just not running, just take around.
Yeah, you only, there's like limited times. I normally park in Dean Street and just walk up. Like car, multi-story. It's cheaper and you can pay by phone.
Okay, you see the issues, yeah? That was a brilliant example, yeah? So whilst it was perceived a good idea, it brings a lot of constraints for people that come from further away. It's a bit more difficult. Yeah? Then we have as well difficult for the government not to intervene if the provider threatens to go bankrupt. We may remember from, you remember the water example from the pubs, South Africa? The water partnership? So in the one case, the company was like, no, not profitable anymore. We actually turn the tap off of the water. Good luck, friends. You get every 3 hours, we open it, and you better use the shower quickly. Yeah. Whilst in the public sector, it was, no, I'm playing here devil's advocate, yeah, so don't take it too serious. But in the public sector, they were like, okay, just let it run anyway. We'll compensate you. Yeah. So there's this public responsibility. Whereas if you're on a business and you run out, and you don't have a public provider, you have to make sure that you survive as a business. If you leave it open, you go bankrupt anyway. It's actually worse. Then the banks come after you, and then whoever your creditors are, this don't necessarily have to be the banks. There are alternatives as well, but it means you are basically in trouble. Now, what is the disadvantage? And this is kind of just empirical. This is quite shocking. So if you look at payments under PFI contracts, well, to be fair, this is kind of when they started. So initially they were actually quite cheap, but over time they generate like a certain payments under PFI contracts by $1 billion per year. So that is basically what the public sector pays the industry at the moment for the PFIs. But you can see it's a gradual increase, and it's over the lifespan. So here you are kind of over the lifespan. And if you want to run on, it's really, really expensive.
Is this partly to do because the public sector has almost allowed its own core competencies to do these things to disappear, so they have no choice? It's
a lot worse.
Right.
The PFI kind of states those buildings were built for 15 years. So now they can basically replace the building gradually at their own terms and conditions because they are still running it. So the PFIs were really public finance, private finance initiatives. So the private companies kind of brought up the money to run it for them, and costs were kind of complemented by the state. Now they got a time set, so a lot of the PFIs are 15 years. There are a few buildings or infrastructure projects that were longer, for 25 years. There was short durations, and basically what has happened, we have hit the 15 years. They haven't demolished them or quitted the service and did a new one, but they were like, hey, can we run it on? And this is very costly at the moment. Yeah. And we are not really equipped, or Pollock and Price pointed actually out, we know already that we cannot really replace it just like that, because we have actually a housing shortage as well. So you can go into construction, yeah, then you are you're in a good place to be. This is something that is a hot topic at the moment. Yeah.
Excuse me. What about the quality? For example, if I'm private, I open just for benefit. I don't care what is the public will be used about. Means I focus about how much I get it.
Well, you charge it. Yeah. So with this, if the clients complain, for example, in a hospital, the beds are not soft enough, and you make an inquiry and figure out the hospital beds are not soft enough, then they ask you as a provider to buy newer, softer beds, then you bid it out. Yeah, and you take your profit margin that you need, yeah, to bid it out. So you price it accordingly. Yeah. They will probably go for due diligence and try to price it themselves and see, but you have a profit margin agreed in those contracts.
Where's PFI again?
This is private financing incentive. Initiative.
If that's what it is.
Yeah. So this was one of the last options that we kind of had. If we can't raise the money, but we still want to do a project, we can lean on the private sector completely to raise the money as well. And this is why many contractors have as well their own bank. Yeah, because banking is as well a profitable business. Yeah? So does that make sense?
But still, I want to have query about which country has oil, for example, that invite some company to come in for investment. That company will provide everything, the facilities, means infrastructure, built infrastructure.
Yeah, this is what I mentioned. So this was the example that I...
Definitely. Maybe, for example, if the contract between the company and government around for 40 years or 50 years like that. Okay, as I am a private company, I care about benefit and how much I get it from the government.
Do you negotiate it?
Yeah, I don't care about how long how long can the government or the public use this infrastructure. For example, if complete the duration contract, as a company I leave to another area, who will protect that quality problem? It means it's coming after 40 years or 50 years.
So with the PPP, you would probably give that risk to the company that does it.
That one has a disadvantage of PPP.
Oh, yeah, but this is the negotiation. So if you go back in in the overview of the... yeah, this will backfire on my timing again. But, so, oh, it's even further. Okay, we are nearly there. There we are. Okay, so this is, for example, private ownership. Yeah, they build it for us. This is the same how Sochi was built. Yeah, so you invite private companies to build it for you, and you allow them to run it. But at the same time, those guys are not really there, so they're not interested. They build it, and if it runs itself, it's good. And if it doesn't run itself, then okay, they will invest only if they are kind of pushed by the government. And that is exactly the setting. So as well in Sochi, there are no contracts. It's just been kind of spoken. A lot of the contracts in Sochi are spoken. So there's no written evidence of this. And they are running it, and this was already, right? The Formula course was running there. Formula One, has anybody... I'm not really, I don't really follow it on that level. But there was a Formula One course. There were already hotel owners that have to basically raise the quality. So the region basically made them, if they want to keep the hotel and don't want to be disowned, discharged, then they have to bring it up to standard. This is how Russia was doing it. So I know that different countries do that very differently. And in the UK, this is all contractually kind of agreed. So this takes a very long time in the UK. Yeah, so different countries have maybe different settings. Yeah, this depends as well. Yeah, depending on what example you are thinking. PPP can be very light. Yeah, just a partnership literally, where you don't have you probably have contracts, but very light contracts. Yeah, and then you have to kind of demand it. You know, you have to push politically for it. Yeah, if you're after the quality, or if you're after the profits, you can say the same. I can reach the quality, but this is my cost. Yeah, and then you cost it in. Yeah, either is fine. So, or either is contractually a possibility. But this is kind of the refinement of the different contracts that were here. Yeah. Oh, terrible. Okay. Anyway. Yeah. Hi. We are nearly there again. Okay, we nearly have it. Okay, so PFI, quite costly, but this is only UK. I should be very careful. I haven't stated that properly. This is actually worse. That is just England, and that is a predictor from Her Majesty's Treasury on PFIs that were started then. Yeah, so this is just modeling up, looking at the cost and the requests basically from the private companies. Yeah?
What's this diagram?
2010, and this is a prediction. This is just based on the current claims.
I was going to say, it seems awfully hopeful, but it seems to, peter itself out.
No, yeah, okay, but this is how the costs are basically spread. Does that make sense? So they could build it at that time, was very cheap for them because it was just a credit, you know, the private sector paid for it. But in 2017 they will have paid 9 billion for it. Yeah, per year. So this is kind of the rent you're paying. It's painful if you have to pay that out of your money.
At the end of the term, who owns the asset? Is that the private sector? So
Now,
you have a PFI
some
for 15
PFI,
years, it's
yeah.
done.
So some PFIs, it's very technical. Land is still public, yeah, but the whole hospital, for example, or the whole school, is actually owned by the provider.
What if one of the trial ones collapsed in the last few months?
Yeah, I think that was a school, right?
No, it was a hospital.
Hospital? Oh, I'm not aware of that.
Maybe I'm thinking. No, yeah, one of the hospitals was supposed to.
False. Yeah, there was one that was spectacular. Where, sorry, I shouldn't. Let me rephrase. So they had built a hospital, and the kind of emergency exit doors were American standard, whilst we, of course, use British standard ambulances, which are wider. So our beds didn't actually fit through the hospital door.
Yeah,
No, and this was kind of like realized after kind of trial opening. So this is really bad. Yeah. Is that what you were thinking of? Is that the maybe?
Yeah, because.
No, but there was one really famous one.
Purely lies and speculation. So I'm not really sure what we're spoken.
But read it up. For example, my colleague, it's not my personal colleague, but sorry, when I say colleagues, I often refer to academics. This is not necessarily meaning, it's why project managers as well in my wider mind. I think I have a boundary issue. But anyway, the key is that Ben Fluberg in Oxford has a database on these case studies, and I bet the hospital will be there. So if you are interested, it's as well with documentation. It's really cool stuff. It's often, because it's public as well, it's often very well documented. Sometimes very polarized by journalists, but it can be entertaining as well.
That might be why I've heard of it.
Yeah. Okay. Now there's a cynical view as well. Yeah, prejudiced concept: public good, private bad. Yeah, and the public view is, so this is the public, this is private, and that is partnership. Yeah, so okay, so select committee, Brown's PFI, extremely inefficient. There were a lot of problems actually with it. The name bailout for Winston Hospital, I think this is the one. Yeah. This is the one with the doors.
Yeah.
So this is how I can remember this. It was hilarious. No, it's not hilarious.
It was bailed out, but I think it's switched hands back into public ownership now.
Yeah, but it was PFI, so it was literally priced. And what was worse, the guys that kind of agreed it on the public side as well, they actually kind of had a dialogue. They had no experience in hospital building, so that was just a disaster. They didn't go for like a consultant or anything. And this is how the American doors came in and things like that. And then they had a big full system, and they needed two to run the whole system. So they kind of cut stuff off like that. Was just.
Well, the idea of Wisdom was that it was going to be a trial scheme, and then to prove how successful the construction was, they were then going to go forward with running some form of infrastructure when the hospital opened as well. Sort of like private initiatives working inside the hospital, like running not necessarily nursing, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There would be private things inside it. And so it was like a trial scheme of proving how well it was going to work, and then even the very first step was completely ridiculously badly managed.
Yeah, so sometimes you try too many new things and it can really backfire. So MP highlights Dudley, is that how you say? Dudley? Mm-hmm. Dudley Hospital's huge PFI bill, 1.3 trillion time bomb. So this is knock-on effect and claims if things go wrong. This is like the potential of what it could cost in the end. Huge cost of PFI schemes, done it staggering by Public Accounts Committee. PFI costing 13,000 per tax-paying household. Now this is not my tax household, but okay, never mind. No, I'm just joking. This is the average, of course. Now, notes from the field. This is kind of from my colleague, just to round it up. PPPs is not entirely good or bad. Contracts often weighted in favor of private sector. This is more development in the UK. We have the opposite in Iceland. If you want to see the opposite contrast, Iceland kind of closed the company down. So it's possible too. It's two extremes. Strong procurement teams are key. You need to know the details as well. Or, as in your school case, get a consultant that builds schools, that know the ins and outs. This is basically what it comes down to. Project management is a key. This is good. And relationship management is a key. So you have to find a communication level. If you're already kind of fighting from the first, kind of like, hey, this isn't working. Yes, it is. Then it will be terrible from there. I can tell you this. I would leave it with that. Okay. Any questions so far? Half an hour. Okay. Let me close this down quickly.